I'm receiving letters every day from desperate people who've lost their employment because they're not vaccinated. You're representing some of these people. What are you finding?
I've been doing this for over 2 years, Alan. First thing I'd say is not a single risk assessment has ever been done in this country by any of the big companies, BHP, Qantas, Woolworths, Coles, or any of the public health departments, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria Health. They always default to the TGA and ATAGI to say, well, if it's approved, it must be safe. There's absolutely no risk assessments done on young, healthy people with no comorbidities that are in the highest risk of catching myocarditis from the vaccines, as everyone at this point in time can agree. Yet these mandates still exist in South Australia, Queensland, New South Wales and Victoria at this date. People are still being terminated because they're not 2-dose vaccinated, despite having natural immunity, despite clearly the risks outweighing the benefits for these people. And their dismissals and their ability to not work or being stood down is creating big shortages in an already sector. So it's just astounding to this day that the courts don't see it that way, and the tribunals don't see it that way either.
But see, Jay, you mentioned that the shortage of staff, and we know that police, nurses, doctors everywhere, massive shortages. But the damage, emotional, psychological, to people who've got children to feed, and they just happen to be professionally accomplished in the health area, and they can't get back their jobs. And I mean, what do these people do?
I'm doing everything I can on our end. There's very few barristers and lawyers who are working with this. It's sort of a taboo area for most law firms. A lot of law firms mandated the vaccine themselves in order to gain favour with big business and government. So there's very few of us fighting for this. Obviously, if you're unemployed or you're stood down, you have very little money to spend on any kind of high-end barristers or law firms. So we're doing this to help those battlers out there. The psychological harm is something we brought up and were ridiculed for bringing up in the first place. I can't describe to you how mentally scarring this has been. The most mentally scarring things for thousands of Australians out there, not being able to pay your bills, defaulting on your mortgage, losing your job, which you love. And I can tell you, nurses in this country love their jobs. They love helping Australians. They love helping everyone going through trauma right now. And then they've been stopped from doing that. And those who are forced to be vaccinated are now suffering mental harm from the understaffing on unprecedented levels. The ramping, the waiting for ambulances, the dissatisfaction is at the highest I think I've ever seen it in the healthcare system in this country. Everyone's been abandoned, Alan. There's no care at all for these people.
And who's listening to you?
The judges look down on them.
I mean, who's listening to you? Who's taking any notice of what you're saying?
I know Red Union are probably the only union that have stood up in this entire time, and they've had to battle with everyone to even remain in existence. No other union will touch vaccine-related matters. They'll glance at it. They may help a bit here or there, but none are coming out and helping the average Australian worker. Those who do finally have to get vaccinated, who are forced to, are bullied and oppressed when they come back to work. There isn't really anyone outside of people like yourself and Red Union at this stage. It is David v Goliath. I can't be more honest than that, Alan. I know in other countries the mandates have dropped. I mean, here we recently concluded the trial against SA Health. The decision came out yesterday against us, in which they relied on UK data. And then if you look at the UK, they haven't had mandates since January 2022. Yet somehow South Australia believes 2 doses is still required in September 2023 and is sacking hundreds of nurses and has sacked hundreds of healthcare workers in the last 2 months alone.
It's frightening. This is terrifying stuff. I mean, put yourself in the boots of some of the people that Jay's talking about. I've quoted many times the professor at Stanford University's Michael Levitt. Way back, he said the level of stupidity going on here is amazing. But the issue, and I'm saying to you, our viewers out there, you ask this question. I mean, Jay and I are not stupid people, and I suppose we've got a bit of clout in the community, but no matter to whom you speak, you can't stop this stuff. A ban on people working because they're not vaccinated. A young lady wrote to me and she said, I've applied for my practicing nursing registration. And of course, AHPRA, that's the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Agency, will be on my back if I do any public interviews. However, I cannot get back my nursing registration. What? That was short of nurses. I mean, you've been described, this man Jay has been described to me as a young, inspiring, passionate lawyer. But you heard him say there aren't others in the legal profession who are prepared to take up this cause. This is taboo. Oh, to hell with them, bugger them. They might be without a job because they're not vaccinated. This is too much. They'll come after me. I'll be regarded as an anti-vaccine person and so on, which is absolute rubbish. I've been vaccinated since I was 2. But I can see this case, which is causing immense damage to thousands of Australians. Jay, you're a lawyer. Under the Privacy Act, is the employer entitled to ask me my medical status? I mean, how does the employer know I'm not vaccinated?
They come back to the same judgment in the Kassam Hazard case at the start of the pandemic, saying it's okay, you can choose not to give us your status, but then you'll be sacked because choices have consequences. That has been repeated as far as yesterday. That was given to us in our judgment yesterday, representing over 150 healthcare workers. Choices have consequences.
And we frown on China and Russia. We're no better than I interviewed a young lady, Jay, born in Cambodia. She arrived here via a dangerous open sea voyage from Vietnam. She finished up in a refugee camp, came here as a 12-year-old, and began her education because they really determined to better themselves. She graduated in medicine from the University of Sydney. She was suspended from her medical practice and still is because she prescribed ivermectin to treat a gravely ill patient with coronavirus, but the patient would not go to hospital. The patient recovered quite speedily. She's banned from practicing medicine. See, Jay, I'm asking the impossible question. I mean, in South Australia, they're turning to you. To where do these people turn?
Again, Red Union is doing everything they can, and their heads below water at this stage, fighting in every way they can. I know Samir Banga has tried his hardest. I know Tony Nikolic has tried his hardest. I know Joseph Manor is doing everything with Melissa McCann for the vaccine injured. I know Raymond Broomhall in Tasmania. I know Nikolai Petrovsky has tried his hardest in multiple jurisdictions to give expert evidence and has lost his professorship recently as a result. I know recently Robert Clancy delivered information to say, yes, this person's natural immunity is by far superior. ATAGI don't know what they're talking about, and he was ignored in the Fair Work Commission.
Astonishing.
It is. I've never experienced anything on this level. Evidence has been
Australia.
The rules
Australian. The anthem says, Australians, let us all rejoice, for we are one and free. We're not free. These are freedoms. I mean, should people be disqualified from employment because they haven't been vaccinated? That's the issue here.